Well, from the unemployment numbers that we have seen grow, fall, and go up again, to the benefits for those who once again find themselves without jobs because of the governor's recent executive order to curb the spread of COVID-19. The hospitality industry particularly has felt the brunt of the virus probably the most in these last several months. The man at the top, who has worked tirelessly with the governor on strategizing unemployment benefits and navigating these unprecedented times, is Steve Grove with DEED. Commissioner of DEED, Steve Grove, so happy to have with us from his home in Minneapolis. Steve, with unemployment no longer giving that extra $300 and Christmas season upon us, are businesses needing help, and are they short-staffed? I can imagine they are.
There's no question this is an unprecedentedly difficult time for businesses. And just to put it into perspective, not only is the coronavirus peaking in our state right now, which just really hurts consumer confidence and our economic growth, but it's also the fourth quarter of the year, which is the most important quarter of the year for businesses. We know that for retailers and for restaurants and for gyms and the like, this end of the year period is important. So businesses do need help. We're working very much on a relief package right now with the legislature to try to bring some assistance to those businesses who have had to, again, take a pause given how out of control the virus has gotten in our state. But I think the other thing to know is that there are many businesses who are not affected as much by the coronavirus who are hiring like wildfire. And I think that's kind of an odd paradox. People don't think about that. You think about all these service industry jobs that have been affected by this virus, but manufacturing, healthcare, retail, there's a lot of industries who can't hire fast enough, and they're having a little bit of trouble doing it. So one of the things we're trying to highlight is the fact that there are a lot of good paying jobs available right now, and that the state of Minnesota can help you find them.
And that's what my next question. Which areas are the most in need of hires? You touched on a few of them very briefly, but let's expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, we'll always see a need in manufacturing. And I'll say in my visits to Rochester, meeting with manufacturers, that's a consistent theme, is that manufacturing jobs are still high in demand. And so manufacturing always tops the list. What's, I think, unique right now is we're seeing a huge surge in needs in the healthcare industry. Not surprisingly, nurses, nursing assistants, personal care aides, long-term care facility employees, these are businesses that really need help right now and aren't able to find enough workers to go around. Now, obviously we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and there's concerns around safety, right? Doing jobs like these puts you maybe into contact with folks who may have the virus or who are at risk. One of the things that we know to be true 9 months into this thing is that so many businesses have really perfected the ability to keep people safe. That extra PPE they have on staff, the social distancing requirements that are there. I think businesses have made it such that workplaces are safer than before. And this is an opportunity, we think, for Minnesotans who are able to go out and both earn a wage and help the state out at a really, really critical juncture in our history.
If the government passes a new stimulus package, Steve, that includes extra money for unemployment, will that start on a new date, or will it backdate when the last bonus stopped?
Well, I sure hope it backdates as far as it can. We know that extra $600 that was in that original federal package was so important. I mean, that made it possible for people to stay home from work in those initial days of the pandemic and still make a wage that would support their families. Without it, you're making, at best, half of what you would have made before. So we certainly hope the federal government makes these benefits as generous as possible. And the timing couldn't be more urgent. And here's why. The extended benefits that usually click into gear on our unemployment insurance system are at risk of fading away at the end of this year because our unemployment rate has gone down. Now, the reality is it's gone down because people have given up on the labor force, which is not a good sign. But the reality is, if federal government doesn't act soon, we could see a lot of Minnesotans losing that weekly benefit by the end of this year, which is concerning. So we compel all your viewers and listeners to contact your congressional delegation and your senators and encourage them to keep pushing hard for a package from Washington. It's really important.
There are a lot of people who have been looking at this unemployment insurance because some people were taking advantage of the fact that it was easier to not work. People were concerned that you're getting paid to not work, therefore people weren't going to go back to work. So can you kind of address the concerns around that And how do we get people back to work once this pandemic is over?
Yeah, it's a great question. And of course, we want and need people to re-enter the labor force as quickly as possible, not even when the pandemic is over, but right now. We
Yes.
can't wait until the coronavirus is gone to begin this economic recovery, particularly in the sectors that have been the hardest hit. You know, we heard some employers complaining about the amount of unemployment insurance benefits that the federal government gave to workers as an inhibitant for them coming back to the workforce. But some of the national survey data showed that, in fact, for the workers that did come back into the workforce, even when unemployment insurance benefits were still there, they did it 7 times out of 10 because they knew longer term it's better to have a job than to be getting a government handout. I mean, this is a state that is full of hardworking people who want to go to work every day. We have some of the highest labor force participation rates of any state in the country. It's that hardworking Midwestern work ethic that just plays such a big role in our state's culture and in our economy. So, I'm not as worried about extra benefits keeping people off of work, because I know Minnesotans want to work and nobody really wants to be sitting on their couch getting a handout. But I think determining the right amount that strikes that right balance is something the federal government's going to have to figure out, and we hope they do soon, because just the standard amount, again, at most half of what you make a week, is not going to pay the bills for most Minnesotans.
My conversation with Commissioner Grove continues after the break, and one topic in this ongoing pandemic has been students. Not about education, but their unemployment benefits. Should they receive a check when they get laid off? We're getting into that next. They are the overlooked piece to the unemployment part of this pandemic. Some say rightfully so. Students, who many consider a non-factor in this unemployment part. It is pocket money after all, right? Why should they get unemployment benefits? Factor this: some students are the breadwinners in their families. There's a change coming for students who get laid off, and that's where my conversation with Commissioner Grove picks back up. I have 2 students in my household who are working right now. They are part-time workers, and part-time workers don't get unemployment. Quite frankly, as a mom, I didn't think that they should be getting unemployment benefits, and I'm okay with that. But there are some households where students who get unemployment, it's important because their parents don't work because they can't for whatever reason, and that is important. Now, talk about the students who need these unemployment benefits.
We have to get unemployment insurance benefits to young people. We just do. There are so many young students for whom they aren't just working for pocket money, they're working to support their families. And the law that prohibits us from issuing those benefits on a regular basis was written in 1939. It's a totally antiquated law, and it prejudices against younger people for really no reason. Our perspective is, if you're old enough to work the same job as an adult, you should be treated like one when it comes to unemployment insurance benefits. Now, there are some rules in place that made extending the federal benefits to these workers a challenge for us that we needed the court to make a ruling on. We're still awaiting the final language in that ruling to determine how to administer the program going forward. But at the end of the day, what needs to happen is that law needs to change. We need legislators to collaborate with us, change that 1939 law, make this right by young people, and ensure that they can receive the same benefits as older workers, so long as they qualify in all the same ways. Age should not be a discriminant on whether or not you should qualify for those benefits, no question.
But let's talk about the qualifying factor of this particular piece to unemployment. Qualifying meaning, if you're a full-time worker, I have to assume, because part-time workers who are students, that would mean more the pocket type money than those who are supporting their families, right?
Yeah, well, if you're a student, it's hard to be a student in high school and a full-time worker, no question. I'm sure there are some who do it. Maybe it's more possible now during the pandemic with distance learning, but most students in high school who are working part-time. There are qualifications in unemployment insurance law that really just look at the number of hours you've worked in the previous year as the determinant for whether you're eligible. And again, that standard should just be applied the same to any worker at any age group, based on the law. It's not currently, but we need to change that law.
You have been a hard man to get a hold of. I appreciate the fact that you have taken some time today to talk to me, Steve. I thank you so very much for doing this interview, and I do hope that we can catch up with you again.
I would love to, Betsy. Thanks so much.
Thank you.